Hello, everyone, and welcome to Countermeasures. Here's what's coming up. Extinguishing the flames of hatred. Nigerians murdered in South Africa. Nigeria has seen an alarmingly high number of attacks and murder of its citizens in South Africa in recent time. It's a sign of an increasingly heated atmosphere. SaharaTV's Countermeasures met with the president of the Nigerian Union in South Africa, Adetola Olubajo, who recounts the deadly ordeal Nigerians have to contend with daily in South Africa, and the ignominious role the Nigerian Consul General in South Africa is playing. Mixed reactions have continued to greet an open letter written on Monday 15th by former President Olusegun Obasanjo to President Muhammadu Buhari on the state of the nation. We sat down with veteran journalist Wale Adeoye to explore the merits and demerits of the contents of the letter. These stories and more as Countermeasures starts right now. The unsolved murder in the early hours of June 13 of another Nigerian in South Africa has reignited debate over Nigeria's failure to effectively confront what appears to be a deliberate, steady, and consistent attack on Nigeria's interest in that country. The Deputy Director General, Chartered Insurance Institute of Nigeria, Mrs. Elizabeth Obianuju Ndubuisi Chukwu, was on Nigeria's delegation to this year's African Insurance Organization conference in Johannesburg, South Africa. On June 13, the day she was billed to catch her flight back to Nigeria, she was found dead in her room at Emperor's Palace Casino, Hotel and Convention Center. The suspicion generated by the lackluster attitude exhibited in this case by the South African police, coupled with a growing tradition of unprovoked killings of Nigerians in South Africa, has impelled prominent Nigerians and groups to insist that enough is enough. The President of the Senate, Ahmed Lawan, had condemned the continuous killings of Nigerians in South Africa, warning that further attacks on Nigerians will no longer be condoned.
South African businesses probably flourish more than any other businesses established in this country. And South Africans are safe, very well protected in Nigeria. There is no need for any South African to take the life of any Nigerian or indeed any other citizen. We are a responsible country. That's why we don't take the law into our hands in the way of retaliation, but we shouldn't be taken for granted.
In an in-depth interview with SaharaTV Countermeasures, the president of the Nigerian Union in South Africa, Adetola Olubajo, and the president of the Center for Protection of Nigerians in Diaspora, Alexander Oji, x-rayed the attacks and murder of Nigerians in South Africa and on what should be done to extinguish the flames of hatred. Go straight to the heart of this discussion. I'll start with you, Mr. Adetola. Why are Nigerians targeted in the attacks in South Africa?
There are numerous reasons that have been cited by the locals, our host community, but I have summed it up to just one. I will mention those ones in passing, but that there is no deterrent. There is no any form of punishment for anybody that actually killed or maltreat Nigerians. You can do it and get away with it. So that's why it's persisting. You know, when you get used to something, you don't get any kind of consequence, so you continue to do it. But the locals, they always talk about Nigerians, most of the blacks, they think that the blacks that cannot speak their local language are Nigerians, because we are very many. Imagine about 170 million in Nigeria, and then we have close to, if not more than 1 million in South Africa. So in every 5 or 10 foreigner you see, 10 foreigners you see 1 or 2 Nigerians. And so they believe that Nigerians are loud, they are very assertive, which they are not used to. They believe that Nigerians are taking their job, they are taking their wives, they are engaging in criminal activities like selling of drugs, prostitution, child trafficking as well. So, and also cybercrime. So they believe those are their prayers. at every point in time. But we have actually go deep into it to say that, yes, there are some few Nigerians that are engaged in crime out there. So in Nigeria also, if you say Nigerians are selling drugs in South Africa, Nigerians are selling drugs in Nigeria. And so that does not mean that you have to be killing Nigerians because Nigerians are selling drugs. Now, but the reason why this killing has been actually persistent and is now outrageous is something that is an emergency case now, is because the perpetrators have not been brought to book. That is the major reason.
That's really, really sad. Let me come to you, Mr. Alexander Oji. You've had, cause to actually deal with Nigerians in diaspora. Can you paint a vivid picture of the state of Nigerians, of affairs for Nigerians who are actually being targeted in some of these attacks?
Well, it's a pity, actually, that we're coming over to discuss the same thing over and over again, because last year when the president of South Africa was in Nigeria, I happened to be in one of the media houses on the news channel, and then addressing an issue. In fact, a night before he came into Nigeria, a Nigerian was murdered in South Africa. And so it's been happening in many countries, in Malaysia and the rest of them. And most recently, we have Cyprus and Kazakhstan and the rest of them. What is most worrisome, like you just mentioned, is the issue of people going unabated, in the sense that you can do anything and get away with it. So why not do more? And then let's not forget the attitude of the Nigerian government towards the same.
Okay.
We must realize that this is all for one for all. If we don't care for ourselves, there's nowhere on earth we expect, the foreign agencies or the United Nations to do more than our own hosts, our own countries should do for ourselves. And that is why I think it is on the responsiveness of our own government and the various agencies that ideally should live up to the responsibilities of ensuring that these individuals are brought to book. But when there has been, absolutely silence or persecution of our own people, I keep telling ourselves that if you look at it today, and the world that we live today, Nigerians and Pakistanis are amongst the most persecuted in the world, looked upon and branded as a very bad dogs. And don't not forget, the easiest ways to kill a dog is to brand it a bad name. Yeah. Anywhere it goes or passes, people will throw stones at it, because why? Nigerians are perceived to be criminal-minded, forgetting the fact that we excel in every community that we get into. And in every endeavor, Nigerians are proven to what? To be good leaders and good ambassadors of themselves. But I think the fact that over these years, when there is a sudden cry, there's no reciprocation of coming to aid of Nigerians. And that is why they have been left to the mercy that even while they die in silence. And that is why the center has taken up this to say, we cannot continue to look at this. We are a people that God has gifted us in so many endowments. We cannot, for the sake of few individuals who have, either by hatred or for any form of reasons, are going against us and attacking our people and killing our people. We can no longer sit, and fold our arms and watch this whole mindless killing, because it's become senseless. And every day the numbers keep rising. And we ask ourselves, when will it end? Because the last times I was in the media houses for this same matter, I thought we'll probably have gotten over it. And the reason why the center has taken time to be able to come up with these activities, because we had to do a lot of consultations and then be able to seek for help, so, for more million Nigerians, which are still doing so. Because it is a huge problem. It is not only South Africans that Nigerians are being killed. Nigerians are being killed all over the world, in the US and the rest of them. And because they're seeing the attitude of our people, when I mean people, the people in governance. There's always, if it is not directly to me, why should I act? And it has to change. That same paradigm attitude has to change. And that is why we're demanding a complete, turnaround from the way and manner things have been done initially to becoming more accountable. If people are killed on a particular soil, there's a need for us to know what actually happened.
Okay. Let me get back to you, Mr. Adetola. What are some of the intractable and endemic problems and impact that these attacks and these killings are having on Nigerians who are living in South Africa?
First of all, is actually limiting their potential to excel, because there is terror that have been unleashed on the community. and you see a situation whereby some people leaving. Quite a number of professionals, they have actually left the country. You see some of them relocating to Canada, America, Europe, some of them even relocating back to Nigeria. A lot of us, which I'm among all of them, we are planning our exit. We're having our exit plan from South Africa to come back home because we thought that South Africa would be a home that we are going to stay. But looking at the way things are, and then the way our government is taking the issue up, so you need to actually have a plan. Secondly, it's actually affecting us in the area of peaceful coexistence. You see, that perception has been raised that Nigerians are criminals, Nigerians are taking their wives, taking their jobs. So therefore, any community you get to, you meet a kind of a negative sentiment around you that you are actually coming to do something bad. And to actually put sort on injury, you see that our government officials, that is those people at the embassy and the consulate, they are the ones that were first to say that without investigation, if somebody died, they will come up with a perception to actually kill the case. Remember, when this lady, I need to correct something. This lady is not the latest person that is killed. More people have been killed after her. One of them was spoken to via a radio interview this morning. That one was killed in June 20. There's another one that was killed just 2 weeks ago, two Thursdays ago, Emeka, now in Johannesburg. Now, the other one was killed in Richards Bay. The killings continues. You know, the problem is this. If Nigerian Union doesn't talk, they are happy, they hide it. When we speak, they attack us. Why are you talking about it? So most times when we inform the government official, we expect them to act. So when they don't act, we run to the media so that our people can know what is happening. Now, a situation whereby somebody will die, and what you will do is just to come up with a story to water down the case. For example, if a Nigerian dies, they look at his personality and then they can just say that he's killed by a fellow Nigerian. They can say, yes, there are so many press releases by the Consul General. He will just say that he's related to courts, gang war. He's actually a criminal activities. He's a drug dealer. He was killed because he's a drug dealer. And then without any investigation, I don't know whether he has done his own investigation within that short period. When this woman died, you know what the first thing that came out? He died of cardiac arrest. And everybody has accepted, we all accepted that, oh, it's unfortunate that he died of a heart attack. Then until when the autopsy was issued by the Department of Health in South Africa, that is when we now started to make questioning. If not, they will have actually misled us and we will have believed that the woman died of cardiac arrest. And also, how do you want the police, the South African police, to actually investigate and be serious about a case when you have actually given a verdict? Oh, our brothers are engaging in criminal activities. So, are we supposed to give the government official trophy for that? Even if a Nigerian kills a Nigerian, our position is this. Anybody that kills a Nigerian, whether a fellow Nigerian or non-Nigerian, it is done on the soil of South Africa. The law must take its course. That is the reason why I say that I have always been saying and I've been advocating that there should be consequence. When there are consequences, it will discourage those people that want to kill. I also cited an example of recent that how are you sure that the killer, the person that actually strangled Mrs. Ndubisi Chukwu, now the person that actually strangled her, how are you sure that he did not even follow her from Nigeria? Because whoever does that knows that if I do it in South Africa to a Nigerian, there will not be investigation. And Empress Palace is a 5-star hotel, and it has huge business interest. There is casino there. There is a lot of things there. And it's not a place that you just walk in and out and not. And this thing is an organized, whatever happened is organized. Because there is no evidence of breaking. There is no, they didn't steal our phone. Our phone was there. Everything was there. according to the brother of the late woman. So it's something that calls for concern. And then the reason why we are actually using this as a point of reference is just that she's not just an ordinary person, she's an high-profile person. What about Maxwell that was killed in Ladysmith? What about Okeke that was killed in Richards Bay on the 20th, after the woman was killed on the 13th? 7 days after, another one was killed. A white guy just decided that he wants to kill 100 Nigerians, and he was just shooting up and down. And so we had to come in. Up till now, the government have not done anything about it. So while we are putting pressure on the South African as a civil organization, we want our government also to actually put pressure on them, to use some diplomatic instrument that is available to them to secure their attention, so that they can actually investigate the matter, prosecute them. We cannot have 100 and something deaths and we'll still continue to say that they are criminals.
That's really horrible. Talking about our government's inaction, so to say, there are fears and concerns that the situation could actually get worse. I mean, if government do not take the necessary, beyond just, for example, the Senate, fuming over the actions and diplomatic relations. Let me ask you, Mr. Oji, is it a time for Nigeria's government to renegotiate its terms of relationship with the South African government?
Yeah, that's exactly the issue at the moment. The thing we're saying is that why is it taking this long? As we saw the way other nationals reacted to when the xenophobic attack came up, In fact, in the case of our own Nigerian government, we had people took trips, and probably went and did some jamborees and came back. I think, like the president said in a few of his remarks recently, he said, the world is watching us. It is how we treat our own issues that other countries will treat us. If we do not take prompt actions to arresting a situation, we don't expect it to get better. You cannot wish a problem away. You must work hand in hand to be able to solve that problem. What we're facing at the moment now is a situation that is already degenerating bad. In fact, by the Consul General's statistics of about 137 or 150 people between 31 months, it is a staggering figure that should shock anywhere in the world, where your nationals are being killed, people who left your shores to contribute, in an environment where they all went for perhaps greener pastures, now brought back home in body bags. It is not the wish of any nation. No. Because these individuals that are being slaughtered for no reasons, because we're here to get the reasons. If they say Nigerians are killing Nigerians, I'm wondering where the statistics are actually coming from, if these are independent investigations, or perhaps there are sources to which these informations are being gotten that has been either been transmitted to the Nigerian government, and the Nigerian government is either waiting for us as a body to cry out, which we're now doing so, to say enough is enough. Our lives matter. And we cannot continue to have the same mindless, attitude to everything. You look at the fact that we have already overblown situations of chaos in Nigeria. Every day it is certain number of people killed, and they will now have the figure now being attached only. And we ask ourselves, what is the life of an average Nigerian what in his home country and outside country? Well, in the past, we probably had this issue of negligence or not realizing how important our peoples are. We are an asset, and that is why this body is actually, out to ensure that individual cases that arise in this, including molestations, we will no longer just let it go anymore. Because the truth of the matter is that if the government is failing its responsibilities, which we are calling on them to act, because the fact that the rest of the world are watching, we have Nigerians all over the world, and many of them are receiving the same similar treatments that are not in any way helping at all. And if Nigerians were to retaliate in the manner, perhaps we'll ask ourselves, will the other countries be treating us with the same levity as we're treating today?
That's true. Before we look at the solution to this cycle of stopping this cycle of violence, let's still look at our government's action and reactions. In a recent interview with Mr. Godwin Adama, that's the Consul General of Nigeria, when he was asked if there is a solution in sight to the repeated murders or killings of Nigeria, he made a statement that for now, I doubt if the South African authorities have solution to general insecurity, particularly on the issues of murders in South Africa. This is what our Consul General in South Africa was saying. What's your reaction to this?
He has basically thrown in the towel that the murder case cannot be solved. And so because for him to go on national newspaper to say that he doubts such, putting it at the doorstep of South Africa solved, they are battling with high rate of crime, but they have measures in place at every point in time, and they have high prosecution rate also. For example, South Africa is battling with a gang-related crimes. They set up an elite unit, a gang unit, and then in what's it called, in Cape Town, some area of Colorado, in Johannesburg, colored area. Now, that's a sign of serious government. They didn't throw in the towel and say, those gangs are very violent. They can actually kill 10 within a space of 1 hour. They do all sorts of things. Some of them go into satanism and so on. But the South African government, let me give you an instance. A lady was killed and was dumped somewhere. Within a space of 1 week, they actually traced the killers because they use forensic and so on. In the case of Mrs. Chukwu, Ndubisi Chukwu, the forensics supposed to take fingerprints of everywhere inside that hotel room. Because if they do that, which I think, I feel they will have done, because without the autopsy, we will have believed that it's just a cardiac arrest. Now, if they have taken the forensics, they can be able to trace the killer. They can be able to, because there's no way a criminal will not leave a trace. So South Africa has, they are battling with crime issue, but at every point in time, they are making effort to solve it. So it's an irresponsible government or worker that is going to say that there is a doubt if there is. Because the only solution to this thing from our own end, because we have actually been in this thing even before he came to South Africa. And so, but it's just that when he's around now, it has skyrocketed. It has never happened in the history of South Africa that a consul general will come and then within a space of 2.5 years, over 150 people will have been killed. And he will continue to say that there is no solution in sight. We have the former consul general, immediately they will come out and even go to their press and put pressure on them. Immediately a Nigerian or 2 Nigerians is killed. Before now, you don't hear such things. Though Nigerians are killed, it's not that it's a new thing, but it's something that happens once in a while. But now, on a weekly basis, you will see a situation whereby Nigerians are...
That's really shocking. I mean, that's really shocking coming from the Consul General. He didn't even stop at that. When he was asked if the mission was planning on getting a private investigation to probe the death, he made this statement that the mission does not have the resources. Mr. Oji.
No. Please, let me speak on that. I'm sorry. When you say private investigator, I was the one that prompted that because I actually challenged them that they should get a private investigator because there are some cases that we solve on our own with private investigators. Because the police investigators, they always drag their feet. When you push them too much, they remind you, your government knows that you are criminal, so why are you disturbing me?
Wow.
Now, the issue is that to get money to do this thing, they can. There are so many things they do that are actually fruitless expenditure. They throw parties every now and then. If a Abikadabri comes, if a minister comes, if anybody, anything, even October 1st, you see them throwing parties at the residents. And there's none of those parties that will be less than 50,000 per. And how much do you pay for private investigator? Between a space of 6,000 and 10,000, at most, even if it's a high-profile one, it cannot be more than 20,000 rands. But at every point in time, on a weekly basis, you always throw parties. You make fruitless trips. If a Nigerian is attacked or killed within the perimeter of the consulate, they hardly go there. But when it is Cape Town, they travel there. When it is Limpopo, they travel there. I'll give you an instance. What happened? When Mr. Razak Ajao was killed 2 years ago in April 2016, 17. Now, what happened was that the Consul General, we informed them, the Consul General actually flew to Limpopo. And then Limpopo is actually not a busy route, so it's an expensive route. So he came with his lieutenant, that's Mr. Anthony Ogbe, he's the one in charge of the community. He came with China's TV crew. They flew together. Now, when they were leaving Johannesburg, it's a 3 hours drive. No matter how slow you are, 3 hours, you'll be there. It's 200 and something kilometers. On a good road, 6 lane, 6 lane. Now, when they were flying out of Johannesburg, they sent a driver in the consulate to drive empty a V8 Toyota Prado engine car to tell you how they squander government expenditure money. Now, they sent a V8 engine car to drive empty. And that one drove 2.5 hours or 3 hours to Polokwane, that's the capital of Limpopo, to go and wait for them at the airport. While they flew with the crew and everybody, they flew and then it took them there. So when they got to the scene, they went to visit those Nigerians that are affected. They gave them some money through the camera. It was later that we got to know that it's 2,000 rands. But they just give them, from my pocket, I give you a this and that and so on. Some element of PR there. Nigerians they slept in a hotel, in a very good hotel. They slept there. Nigerians were actually, I was also there. I drove my car from Victoria where I was living. Now, Nigerians was actually gathered in a place because we have a branch there. They gather Nigerians. They are expecting, because the tension was high. And so, by the time they are supposed to meet those Nigerians, they are in a hurry. They said they have to go. They have a meeting in Johannesburg. They have to go. It's this and that. Those Nigerians were left hanging. And they flew back to Johannesburg. And that car, that Jeep, that Prado, V8 engine car, actually drove back empty to Johannesburg. Tell me, there is no way that, excluding their ESTA code, because anytime they move out, they are paid ESTA code. So there is no way in anybody's calculation that trip will not have cost up to 50,000 rands, which is way over 1 million naira. And such a person will now be telling you that there is no budget for that. If that killing is actually affecting him, can he not improvise? There are internally generated revenue within the consulate. There is nothing that is done free in the consulate. You want to stamp your certificate, they collect money. You want ETC, emergency traveling document, to just identify you that you are in Nigerians, they charge you money. Whatever you want to do, you want to convert your driver's license, you need a letter. Sometimes you will need a letter from your consulate to actually authenticate whatever you are saying to the host community. They collect money. So they are collecting money from Nigerians for every services they are giving. And so now, why will you now say that there is no money? When your predecessor will say, the predecessor will always tell you to say that, bring a particular project, tell us what will help Nigerians. If we don't have money, we talk to those who are doing businesses. There was a time they hosted for October 1st. The consulate did not spend a cent. They spoke to MTN, MultiChoice, and so on, and they brought money, a lot of them, to actually feed Nigerians. So why can't you use the same initiative, if at all this killing is actually affecting you? Because I can't understand why a leader will not be able to improvise. If the government does not ever say that we are going to be killed there, so they are not going to have budget for such. So it's now left on you as a leader now. There are certain things that I've experienced, that I've encountered. For example, I've never encountered that I will be attacked by government officials for speaking out against Nigeria. It's not part of what I signed for. But when it comes, I manage it. I won't say that there is no budget for such. I cannot travel home. I cannot travel. There's no budget for me to travel to this place. There's no budget. So, but I am doing it because it's part of effort to actually stop this killing. So it's very irresponsible and illogical of him to say such a thing.
That's a serious indictment on the Nigerian government. Mr. Oji, let me ask you this. What kind of engagements do you think the Nigerian community should have, especially Nigerian community, Nigerian businesses, should be having with the consulate in terms of protecting the lives of Nigerians?
Well, I think from what Mr. Adetola has actually said, you can see that the relationship between the consul office and Nigerians residing, we're not looking at just 10 or 15 Nigerians, we're looking at about 1 million or more of Nigerians residing in that particular country. Assumingly, in the past they had a good, smooth relationship, perhaps we may not have gotten to where we are, especially in the issue of antagonizing our people and branding them bad names, especially in the image, because image is everything. I think the major issue is about the two countries coming on a diplomatic table to perhaps rediscuss this issue again. I felt that part of the reason why Ramaphosa was in Nigeria last year was particularly for this same reason. But immediately he came and then left, we never had anything again. So we're going back again to the same situation where we still have so many things that Nigerians are now complaining, especially with the fact that we have so much South Africans also in Nigeria here, going about their various businesses and then without the worry about being attacked or reprisals or for any reason at all. So we expect that the same thing should also be accorded to us in South Africa, especially with the issue on ground at the moment now, where we're having lives being lost, the families are not even reached, there is no compensation to the families, there is no whatsoever comments to the Nigerian government as regards this, and then we're asking, if truly the lives of our people really matter. Let us not forget the fact that, assuming our people went on their own to carry out reprisals, what would have been the response from the South African government, especially in the businesses? Supposing our people begin to boycott the businesses, what effect it will have on South Africa and also in general, because let's not forget that some of the giant companies in Nigeria today are owned by South Africans. And then we know how much we are patronizing and taking them as our own number one companies. It is also a lesson for us as a country that there's a need for us to begin to reorganize our own things. That if we don't take care of our own, no one else will. And let's not forget that our people in government are usually gods. When they get into position, it is difficult to actually reach or even to get attended. For instance, some of these issues we're seeing, it's not as if other countries have not seen it in the past, but it's how they handle the matter. And that is why it is not continued. Look at our neighboring sister Ghana. We've seen the way and manner Ghana is beginning to rebuild its image from home. And it's also telling outside the way and manner they're being treated. I don't think if Ghanaians were killed in South Africa, one or two Ghanaians were killed in South Africa, and we have the same thing, the same cordial relationship that the Nigerians giving our own host over there as we're doing here. Perhaps we need to reawaken and let them realize that we're also warriors in our own field, and we must do everything to protect our dear nation and our people. Because the fact that they live in South Africa and do business in South Africa as legitimate, we will never support anyone found on the wrong side of the law. Right. That is not what we're for. We believe Nigerians are highly energetic individuals that are making their very best, to ensure that they give this country a good name. Let us support that.
Now, Mr. Adetola, let me get back to you on this because we seem to be looking at the solutions at this point in time. You've been living and working in South Africa, and if I may ask you, what do you think the government should do at this time to stop and end this cycle of violence getting out of control?
Serious engagement with their counterparts in South Africa. The president should pick a call and call the president of South Africa and let there be a very serious engagement on that. It cannot be correct that this cycle of killings cannot stop. Even if it's Nigerians, even if it's all the criminals in Nigerians that have actually gone to South Africa, according to, I'm going by what the Consul General have said, because he knows what we don't know. The latest press release that the press statement that I actually made which is about 14 hours ago, just yesterday. He said, he gave the statistics to say that 60% of the killing is done by Nigerian, 15% is done by police, and so on and so forth. That means he has done investigation, he has concluded them, he has names of suspects, because before you could give statistics and be very sure and put number on it, if I say majority, then I don't know, I cannot even lay hands on it. So now, there should be serious engagement. And that serious engagement will bring about working relationship with both of them so that they can be able to root out criminals. Because now South African soil should not be an abattoir for slaughtering our people. Yes. If they make it like now, it's now an industry. Let me shock you. There are some guys in prison.
In South Africa?
In South Africa, Nigerian guys in prison. There are 2 of them. They were jailed for murder. The community in Imo State, they actually came out and then make sure that they go to jail. Now, these guys have made this killing an industry. People contract them according to what we hear. You know, if there is no investigation, I will not make an authoritative statement. But from what we gather, what we hear, those guys, which is a fact, they make call to flourishing Nigerians. They call you and give you bill. Pay a ransom, we leave you. If you don't pay, we deal with you. So some have been killed, some escape it and they leave that area. Some of them even run back to Nigeria. I know 2 that run back to Nigeria. Maybe I can hook you up with one of them if he's willing to talk on camera. If not, you can actually protect his identity that is presently in Nigeria now. He lock up his business and move away when he was shot and then he actually survived it. I know another one that moved from Sunnyside to Pretoria West. He was shot. And then a lot of them. The manager of one of the former president of Nigerian Union was also shot dead in front. I was in Anambra State about 2 weeks ago to bury the guy. And so it has gone to the extent that some people are now taking advantage of it. Yeah. So it cannot be correct that we will allow South Africa to be an abattoir to slaughter Nigerians. And so now, it is not just a problem of residents anymore, because it has proven that if you visit South Africa, something can happen to you. And our government official will quickly move in to say that you are either a criminal, or is a cardiac arrest, or you are a drug dealer. Yes. And then the police apathy will kick in, because immediately your family or your father or your government is saying that you are actually a criminal, then there is no need for them to waste their resources in actually investigating. So there should be serious engagement and collaboration with the community organization, because we have a lot of intelligence and there is a trust deficit between us and police at the lower level, because they work with some of the criminals. And so if that early warning unit was actually constituted, as it was envisaged by Minister Godfrey Oyema and then the Minister Dambazao that came in 2015, that representative of South African government, representative of Nigerian government, then Nigerian Union, so that we can be able to give them information. Because these guys that are in prison now, they have unleashed terror. People are even afraid to talk. When you ask them questions, they have to take you to a corner to talk. They are being called at every point in time, but all of us cannot be afraid. If it's going to be the death of Mrs. Ndubisi Chukwu that will help us in actually stopping this, let it be what we are going to get from it, because we need to get to the root of the matter. I cannot be giving, I've been given the task and the confidence have been put on me to actually lead. So I cannot say I'm afraid to say it out. So that's why I have to speak about it, irrespective of the fact that my security also is affected. I have to speak about it.
Great. Let's just say this. Let's round this up. I mean, I would appreciate it if you could just say this in one minute. Let me start with you, Mr. Oji. Beyond the condemnations, like we said, what practically should the federal government do in order to stem the tide of the wave of violence?
Well, there are diplomatic engagements which are instruments developed, which they can actually apply. But at the moment, even though we may not advocate, that Nigeria should go out in retaliation, which would definitely not, is not the best solution to this. Let's hope that the government will wake up to responsibility, especially now that we're crying out and saying that the ways is to engage South African government and then perhaps give them a sound, pure warning that this must stop. And then all those who have been killed in South Africa, we must all open up the cases and then have a thorough investigation on all of them and let us know what exactly has transpired. And then compensation should be paid to the families. We will not stop at that until all this is achieved, because the lives of Nigerians matter, irrespective of wherever they are, and we're coming after anywhere they may be. The peoples who are doing this were saying, it does not make sense to kill a fellow human being. There is no gain in it. Why do this? We're not doing it to your own people. Nigerians are peace-loving people. We know we have few bad eggs, but the few bad eggs should not rub on all of us.
Final words, Mr. Adetola.
And I'm going to say that the government officials should stop misleading the government at home by trying to change the truth to a kind of a cooked narrative. Let them actually come out and say it the way it is, and not take a conclusion before investigation starts. Because if they continue that way, then our people will continue to die like chickens. And so the government officials should stop misleading those people at home, and then the government themselves need to overhaul our embassies and then consulates general in the world. You will see that it's not only happening in South Africa. It's in Malaysia, it's in UK, it's in... so now they are now like fire brigade. They are now quenching fire. Instead of them to actually rebuild, there is need to overhaul all these embassies and consulate general.
Former President Olusegun Obasanjo had on Monday written an open letter to President Buhari, accusing him of not doing enough to tackle the increasing rate of insecurity in the country, among other challenges. Mixed reactions have continued to greet the open letter by former President Olusegun Obasanjo to President Muhammadu Buhari on the state of the nation. We sat down with veteran journalist Wale Adeoye to explore the merits and demerits of the contents of the letter. When you first read the letter, so to say, what was your initial reactions?
Well, I was not surprised, because former President Olusegun Obasanjo has a trend, a tradition of writing letters. He did during the time of Shehu Shagari, he did in the time of RBB, he did in the time of Abacha and Yaradua. In fact, almost every successive government, President Obasanjo usually come out, at a critical moment. I think we have to look at the issues he raised from a very broad spectrum of analysis. First, we have to recognize his freedom of speech. Every Nigerian has the right to speak out his mind on issues that he thinks are very, crucial. And I think on that basis, we cannot fault him. Then we also have to look at it from the perspective of being a former head of state. He was military head of state, up till 1979. And he was also an elected president for 8 years. So we should expect that he may have some information that ordinary people on the street may not have access to. So as given his status, somebody is also respected globally. His voice is a very important source of information for the local and international community. Then we also have to look at it from the perspective of a victim of human rights. He was detained and sentenced to death by the former head of state. So in a way, he has passed through what many Nigerians go through every day, being detained, tortured, and also we should look at it from the fact that, he is also a violator of human rights. He was the one that introduced Itaoko in the 70s, where people were kept right in the midst of the ocean. He was also the one that introduced a lot of garrison mayors to strengthen the unity structure of the Nigerian state. For instance, he brought in the land use decree, which hijacked, the ancestral lands of indigenous people and appropriated it under the federal government of Nigeria. And under his own leadership, In 1976, for instance, he was also part of the major leaders of this country at that time. They took over institutions that are supposed to be the brain box of the three regions. For instance, University of Ife was taken away by the federal government in 1976. He was part of that government. ABU was taken away, from the northern region. UNA was taken from the... So they appropriated, source of indigenous knowledge of, these communities. Those institutions were centered on indigenous values of those regions where they were established. So then we also, understand what happened, when in November 19 to 1999, when OD was attacked, and over 300 people were killed. I was one of the first journalists that visited that community, and I saw child, remains of women, of children, after military invasion, where a lot of people were killed. And also we have Zakimbiam, that was also attacked in the most savage, brutal manner. So when you look at all these things, President Olusegun Obasanjo has two faces, But I think we have to go beyond him as a person and look at the message. So I think he raised four major issues. The issue of the possibility of fake news fueling ethnic crisis. That's a reality that we have to admit. He also raised the issue of the possibility of uprising, all over the country that might snowball into what you had in Rwanda. I think that's also a fact that we cannot deny. He also said the state has been abandoned to the hands of bandits. Well, we see banditry, in Zamfara State, in Katsina State. People are killed. People are being sacked from their homes. Even right in Katsina, where the district head of Daura was kidnapped, right in the in the home of the president. And where the defense minister comes from, there have been banditry, even including what happened in his own village, where communities were sacked, and taken over by bandits. And of course, we can't ignore the fact that in the northeast, Boko Haram continues to register his atrocious, footnotes in those areas. So it's a fact that the country has become increasingly insecure, and I think it's a reality that we cannot deny. We also see measures of, kidnapping and also going all over the country. So I think those issues he has raised, they are very, very important issues that we cannot ignore.
Now, let's highlight some of these issues. Basically, we all know that the major highlights has to do with the appalling insecurity in the country, which was addressed. And let's look at some of the highlights of the issues that he raised. He made this statement that he's very much worried and afraid that we are on the precipice and dangerously reaching a tipping point where it may no longer be possible to hold danger at bay. Is Nigeria at a tipping point, sir?
I think if you go on the streets, the street corners, the marketplaces, these are words that people utter every day. Talk to any Okada person, talk to any trader, talk to farmers who can no longer go to their farms, whose livelihood have been taken away from them. Talk to people who live in the northeast, who live in Zamfara, people who live in Osun State, where people are being kidnapped every day. The only shift is that, it is the former president that's now saying it. That's what makes it different. But it's the fear that, comes to us every day. You can't travel to your hometown. You can't travel to your village. You are afraid of being kidnapped. You can't go to your farms. Sakat groups have been invaded. So I think, Nigeria is a highly inflammable country. Any little spark can lead to a major crisis. So I think it's a fact that we cannot deny ourselves. I think people need to be very honest to look at President Buhari in the face and try and stop being sycophantic just for political conveniences. We should be bold enough to tell him the truth. And I think some of us who see ourselves as his best friends should be the one to be able to tell him the truth instead of sycophants that keep on deceiving the president all the time.
Let's also look at one of the issues which you earlier mentioned, referring to the Zakubiam, as well as the OD invasion by the former president himself. He raised this statement that herdsmen and farmers' crisis and menace started with government treating the issue with coddling glove instead of power. That calls to question the handling of the herders farmer crisis by this presidency. And he was insinuating that they should have actually handled it more seriously. I mean, using the hammer approach. Would it have worked?
Yeah, I think if we are to go by President Olusegun Obasanjo's strategy, what he did in Odi, where people protested, with leaves, with sticks, and then the next thing was to go there and attack them. Even if there were pockets, incidents, not substantial, of a few people using arms to attack people, and even it was not enough for the presidency to have taken that decision to invade our community and kill so many people. And I think we could see the consequence, and also you look at what happened under Mohammed Yusuf. He was picked and he was tortured and he was killed. Then look at the consequences. So I don't think, in as much as we may not agree with the strategy being employed by President Buhari, I don't think the right thing is that when if people have committed crime, then the next thing is for you to send airplanes to bomb the communities, at the end of the day, leaving behind casualties of innocent people, and even the people that are the main perpetrators of crime, managed to escape. So I don't think, judging from precedents, we can adopt President Olusegun Obasanjo's approach. That is not to accept the strategy that has been adopted by the current regime. I think there have been a lot of failure in terms of intelligence gathering, in terms of management of information, in terms of networking among the security operatives. And I think traditionally Nigeria seems to be promoting state security instead of security built among built around human security. So if you look at the director of state, they talk about DSS, Directorate of State Security. It's not about the people. So security is built around, is conceived around protecting the state instead of protecting individuals. And that's why you see that individuals in this country have more, elite. They have more policemen guiding them than police, that is meant to guide ordinary people on the street. So I think there should be a paradigm shift from protection of the state and its individuals to protecting communities and protecting the people.
Great. Whatever may be the grievances of Fulanis, I'm also quoting about President Obasanjo, they need to be put out in the open, and their grievances, if legitimate, be addressed. And if other ethnic groups have grievances, let them also be brought out in the open and addressed through debate and dialogue.
Yeah.
Considering your recent, most recent activities involving inter-ethnic reconciliations and peace meetings, dialogue sessions, do you think this will have been a better cause for President Muhammadu Buhari to go through?
From our experiences in terms of working on conflict prevention and peace building, we think that the best way is to negotiate. The best way is to discuss. And if you trample over these main pillars of peace building, then you are going to have a lot of crisis on your hand. We were in Kano, we were in Kaduna, we were in Port Harcourt, we were in Abuja. We met with different communities. What has been absent is a people-driven, platform for constructive engagement of stakeholders. What we have been having meetings, negotiation platforms that are driven by political interest, that are not actually put in place to address the grievances and the deep feelings and aspirations and fears of the people. So I think what President Obasanjo has said is a fundamental issue. That we need to talk. We need to bring people together, the Miyetti Allah, the ethnic groups, the communities whose lands have been taken, whose sacred groups have been invaded, whose values, spirituality, has been polluted. We need to have a way of talking, to each other. But then we should not also overlook the fact that suggestion by the former president to me is a bit opportunistic, because there was a constitutional conference, national political conference, which is set up in 2005, and recommendations were made that there should be a dialogue. Resolutions were made, billions of naira were spent. At the end of the day, it was in power, for years. These recommendations were dumped into the waste bin of history. We also had another one in 2014, where brilliant recommendations were made that could have, resolved these fundamental problems. These people were in power. They did nothing about it. And that is why when they are speaking, we must be able to understand as human beings, that within the context of the interplay of political interests, they are not really out for you and me. They are trying to defend the system from collapse because they know if there's a revolution, they will be the first casualty. So we must take their recommendations with a pinch of salt and with caution, because there has never been a time that they stand with the people. But that does not mean there's no sense in what they are saying. But we should not be carried away that these are our saviors. They are not.
That's scary. He also made a very ominous statement regarding the fact that which is part of the avoidable calamities that includes spontaneous or planned reprisal attacks against Fulanis, which may inadvertently or advantageously mushroom into pogrom or Rwanda-type genocide that we don't believe could happen, and yet it happened. Could that really take place?
Yeah, if you see what happened in Rwanda between Tutsi and Hutu, we are facing almost the same pattern. You could imagine, the case of Olufalaye that was kidnapped. In the southwest, it's a former presidential candidate, Nadeko shifting. You can imagine members of pan-Yoruba groups, let's say OPC or the Liberation Movement, going to Kano, to kidnap Maitama Sule and keeping him right in the forest in Kano or Kaduna. You can imagine people going to kidnap the daughter to kill the daughter of Shehu Shagari, God forbid. People that are alien to those territories and committing this atrocity, kidnapping people in Kano and moving all the way from southwest to Kano to kidnap them, prevent them from going to their farms. Man, let us be reasonable. I mean, these things are not normal. And we have to be very honest with ourselves that there is a kind of bottled up anger, and we should be very careful so that this bottled up disenchantment do not explode. People value land. It's about spirituality. It's about heritage. It's about the source of their being, the source of their health. Our people are tropical dependent people. They go to forest for herbs. They go to forest for their livelihood, for vegetables, for everything that they need, for their protein. So if they now find it difficult to go and visit these areas, just because some people that are alien to their culture have taken over this forest, it's a very big problem. We need to be very honest with our history. We need to be conscientious. We need to be able to look at the president right on his, look at his eyeballs and tell him, look, there's problem. We need to address these problems before it is too late.
He also took a swipe at the president, that the president must be seen to be addressing this issue with utmost seriousness and with maximum dispatch and getting all hands on deck to help. Has President Buhari failed as far as the security?
I expect recently some ethnic leaders have been visiting the president, to congratulate him on his recent victory, But I think it goes beyond a second term. I expect the president at this time to have invited the traditional rulers, in fact, to go to their domain, not even inviting them to Ashu Rock. He should fly down. He should fly down to Akure. He should go and meet, Fashionati. He should fly down there and send emissaries to him to say, look, I feel deeply shocked about what happened. And I assure you I'm going to find out those who are responsible for this.
But he has sent the vice president.
Yes, that's a very good thing. But, we are not talking about what happened in Akure alone. We are talking about what happened all over the country. So, and I think that should be the basis for us to call for a national dialogue. We don't have to wait. The issue, people are talking about now is about this, waiting for the list of ministers and all that. There are burning issues that we need to address. So I think the president need to, even if he cannot, meet all the traditional rulers right in their domain, he should invite them, for a 2-day discussion and then reinforce confidence, put hope where there's despair, where people are frustrated, and reassure them that, look, I'm here and I can assure you I'm going to address your fears. I'm going to deal with your fears. I'm going to ensure that what is happening in this country, I'm up to the task. So when there's a breakdown of communication, then we'll end up aggravating the problem.
This is about the 5th month since the president actually was elected.
Yeah, since and we don't have to, because he is the president of the country, even while the election was going on. So we don't have to wait until you take the oath of office before you address issues that are burning at your background. At your background. So I think we need to admit the reality of the current realities, and we should not substitute our own consciousness for the consciences of the people. To say because I'm a minister, I'm a member of APC, then no, people should shut up. You should stop ethnicizing the issue. You should not say the country, you should not say the country on the path of war. Why are the people saying the country on the path of war? There are people that are holding AK rifles, not the innocent people that are being kidnapped, not farmers that are being taken away. Those that are seeking for war are those coming from Burkina Faso, from Mali, to attack innocent people with arms, with AK-47. Those are the people that are actually trying to lead the country on the path of warfare. We need to be realistic, to tell them the truth that things must be done the right way.
So beyond this open letter and, this open criticism, what should be done at this point in order to address the appalling state of insecurity in Nigeria?
Yes, we realize there is a problem of climate change, that is, the crisis in the Maghreb region, where people have access to illicit weapons. In fact, from our investigation, there are about 500 million illicit weapons in West Africa, and about 350 of such weapons are in Nigeria. So we are more or less sitting on a keg of gunpowder. So we need to address the problem of proliferation of arms. There is so much arms in the hands of non-state actors. We need to mop up these arms. The president made a blanket statement, asking people to return their arms. But I think we have not really been able to implement some of these decisions in a decisive and a proactive manner. It's just a kind of public statement, political statement, without any weight. People don't even actually take it serious. Because people who get these guns legitimately, they are not the people that are our problems. It is those people that have access to these weapons illegitimately. And those ones are not likely to respect whatever law or whatever statement you are making. Because in the first place, they don't respect the state. They don't have respect for your laws. So they are not going to hand over their weapons. Then we must have an effective intelligence gathering mechanism. You see a situation where people are killed, and we wait for about 7 days, 1 month. Most of the time, we don't even end up getting to know those that are responsible for the killing. Look at what happened in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is also a third world country. After that bomb incident, in the next 24 hours, we were able to get the identities of those that were responsible, for the attack. Their picture, their background. We look at what happened in Saudi Arabia and UAE, where some Nigerians were involved in fraud. Less than 7 hours, the pictures were on the internet. These people that commit this crime, they have access to telephone. They have access to telephone, so it's very easy, through the global, communication system to even track them. Because before you can have a cell phone, you are supposed to be registered. Your fingerprints will be there, so you can track the calls of these elements. And of course, we are talking about some of them, hiding in the forest. That is why you have drones. You take drones, you take pictures, then you look at the faces, and then you'll be able to know that these are the people that are responsible for this crime. And of course, if you look at what we have been having, the place where this particular woman was killed is notorious for similar killings in the past. So we have had incidents, not one, not three. What did the police do? Such a place should have been manned, with CCTV, so that you can capture the faces of those that are responsible. There should have been intelligence gathering using community people in those areas to know the hideouts of these criminals. But up till now, it's going to about 1 week. We are still talking about, don't ethnicize the killing. Nobody is even talking about the fact that these are the people that are responsible for the killing. So I think we need a paradigm shift from what we have been doing in the past. The government needs to be more serious. Look at what is going on in the country. We don't have an effective forensic laboratory except the one in Lagos. In the whole of southern Nigeria, only Lagos has effective forensic lab where you can take fingerprints of people. Just a strand of hair is enough for you. If there's a crime, the scene of crime, the next thing is that, you take a strand of hair, you take samples, and then within the shortest time, you're able to determine those that are responsible for that crime. But see what happened in the case of the woman that was killed. The first thing the police will do is to take the car, probably take it to the home of the family. They don't condone off those areas. When there's such killing, you see that people mingle around the whole area, people do all sorts of things. So you can even cover up crime. Because the fingerprints you are going to take there may not, actually be, to be a mix-up, So you have a situation where crimes are committed and the police do not have a mechanism of responding in a decisive and in a very swift manner. So I think it's not really good for us because this thing can happen to anyone. Nobody is safe except government officials who are protected by, by the police, and except government officials who drive with convoys that are protected with armed men. But for the ordinary man, you know, and these people are less than 1%. So they need to think about the interests of the majority of Nigerians and do the right thing before it is too late. Anything can happen in this country. It's highly inflammable, and we do have to wait for the worst things to happen before we take proactive measures.